Hey everyone, we're back with the Fantasy Authority Game Day show. Here to get you ready for your fantasy football Week 5 action. It should be an exciting week. Hopefully you're doing well so far in your fantasy football seasons. We're 4 weeks in, so if you're 0-4, that is a shame. And you're going to have a hard time getting out from under that bus right there. Only 14 weeks typically in the fantasy season. You're not off to a great start. We'll help you get back on track right now, right here, with some lineup advice. If you want some life advice, we can attempt to do that for you, but I can't guarantee that any of us will be very good at it. But we'll try, I guess. As always, you can get the questions to us on YouTube right there in the chat, or you can go to Twitter and use hashtag AskTFA. Joining me today, I have Kevin Steele and Travis May for the first time, host of our Dynasty Life podcast, will be joining us today for the Game Day show. How we doing, guys?
What's up? Good to be here.
Awesome. You know, my Chiefs can't get their ass beat this week, so that's good.
Yeah, a week off there for you. Hey, and my Titans actually have a chance against your Dolphins, Anthony. So.
I know. We've been joking all week pretty much. It's the battle for the second pick or the first pick in the draft or whatever. Nobody else in the world is going to be watching this game but us.
Basically.
That's it.
We're the only two fans that actually care anymore for either team, and they're awful. So, it's whatever. I've moved past this. I'm just looking forward to my fantasy teams doing something relevant. So, and believe it or not, somehow DeMarco Murray actually doing something because he's the only fantasy asset worth anything right now, right?
Absolutely. I mean, right now I have my one league. I have David Johnson and DeMarco Murray, so I'm rocking the top 2 fantasy running backs so far and loving it. DeMarco's just been absolutely on fire. I think the most frustrating part about watching these two offenses is just how much they struggle, how many 3-and-outs they have, how much they just come out and lay an absolute egg. Maybe they can get it going against each other, though. As Kev mentioned, he doesn't get to watch his Chiefs this week. The Chiefs are on a bye, along with the Jaguars and 2 other teams that I'm blanking on right now. Who wants to help me out with that one?
Seattle, Jacksonville, New Orleans.
All right, Seattle, Jacksonville, New Orleans, and Kansas City all on a bye this week, so you will not be starting any of their players. So if any questions come through with any of them, we're just going to kind of ignore that. Unless it's a rest of season question, then we'll be sure to hit on that for you. I guess it's probably best to start off with the injuries, huh?
Yeah, because there is a long, long list.
This first one, I didn't know about this, the Stephon Diggs one, is huge to me because they've been trying to get Cordero Patterson more involved in this offense. And now is Stephon Diggs out? Is Patterson a legit option against Houston?
I mean, he was far more involved than I think anybody expected last week. I don't think anybody saw that coming from him. He's been pretty underwhelming so far, really since his rookie year, whenever he had that kind of mini breakout there, which is what most Viking wide receivers do. You know, they kind of get you excited, then they let you down. So, but I don't know. I mean, with so many injuries this week and buys, I guess you could fire him up, maybe a deeper league, but I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. But because I think the Vikings really try to just pound the rock this week with Jerick McKinnon and lean on their defense. But he's worth a look, I guess, depending on what options. But there's so many options this week that are players that should be available that I don't know if you necessarily need to go with that low down.
Yeah. Good point. Just a few of the options here because I've also had to kind of fill in a receiver here and there. So I've been looking at guys like Bryce Butler. Terrence Williams is available, right? Chris Hogan's available in a lot of leagues, and there's Cordero Patterson. What are the top guys you guys have been using to fill in for your bye week receivers?
Well, for me, I haven't had to do that a ton just yet, but this week is really that first one where you're actually starting to look around and I go, you know what? I actually probably need somebody. But I actually plugged in, it was Jamison Crowder horribly against the Browns. So we'll see if he bounces back for PPR purposes. Adam Humphries, I think I plugged and played once. Same outcome, horrible. These guys that I play in a lot of deeper leagues where you have to start, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and at least 2 other flexes, if not more. So definitely having to scrounge around and try to play with a lot of lower name guys. But I'm not actually looking at Patterson really at all. I'm not going to buy it again. Sorry, not going to get baited into that again.
Yeah, it's tough. But then, what do you? How do you feel about like Cameron Meredith, who's kind of been the darling of the fantasy world this week? Now, and then you have other guys like in New York with Robbie Anderson or Sharon Peake who have gotten a little run this week. How do you feel about those guys?
I feel better about Cameron Meredith than I think I do either Jet this week that you mentioned. I think Cameron Meredith could actually just be a volume guy, could plug and play and be, Alshon's not even 100%. So Kevin White's on IR, Eddie Royals got the calf, Alshon Jeffrey's not 100%, and Zach Miller's not even 100%. And Jordan Howard is a rookie, so are you just going to only throw passes out of the backfield to Jordan Howard? No. I can see Meredith getting a healthy amount of targets, even if he doesn't deserve them. So at least this week, I think he's going to get a healthy amount of usage in the 7 to 10 target range potentially. And if he's doing that, he's definitely worth those plug-and-play flex options.
I completely agree. I actually picked him up in a few spots this week just to kind of see what happens. Is he like Marquise Wilson, who kind of caught on last year and the year before really, and had some usable weeks. And he is I think he's a 6'3", 205 or 207 pound. I think he ran like a 4.40 in college. So I know a lot of people are excited about his his athletic profile, but I like him. There's nobody else really there, and if Alshon Jeffrey's matched up against Vontae Davis, who's been solid this year, then Cameron Meredith could really eat this week. So I don't know. I think he's worth a shot, if you're really, hurting, and because I'm always looking for the upside, and I think he may have the most of it of all these, lesser owned guys, best of the rest types of talent.
I agree.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Travis. You're actually starting Meredith against me in our PPR listener league.
Wait,
I'm against Kev, yeah. I'm going to crush him this week. His team doesn't stand a chance. I'm sorry, Kev.
Too many players on by.
Yeah. I looked at your projected, and usually, I don't like to look at projected, but this one just popped out at me because it's like 98 or something like that. I was like, oh my God, his team must be just decimated right now. Everybody's on a bye.
Yeah, I have way too many dynasty leagues this year. I just joined too many startups, and so I'm trying to work 10 dynasty leagues and then at the same time do all my normal redraft stuff. So I'm never doing that again. It's going to be a mess. But that league, I'm not starting off so hot. So I did actually pick up Cameron Meredith in every dynasty league that I actually could, though. Just because even if he goes off and I don't necessarily believe in him this week, I'm going to be looking to move him really quickly because he's obviously not the long-term play there. Somebody can try to feed you otherwise, but he's not. So,
take advantage of that recency bias.
Yeah, Dontrell Inman sell for Antonio Brown because apparently he's that good, right? That's so frustrating. He's not going to do that this week, by the way. So don't bet on it anyway.
Inman.
Like the whole year, he had more targets last week, I think, than he had the whole year. Just crazy. Just shows up and blows everybody away.
Yeah, we talked about that,
including.
So, go ahead.
I was just saying it was just gross. I lost primarily because of him, and Bryce Butler. It was full, and I basically lost because of somebody's team was so bad that they had to start Bryce Butler and Dontrell Inman, and
so bad that they won. The Curry won with those two. That's insane.
That's the worst. Like I think last week, like really was a highlight of like anybody that was terrible last week probably got a win because those were the players that really went off last week, and it was just kind of one of those weird weeks we see every year in fantasy where all of a sudden, like I don't know, that just stars align for people with the terrible teams, and all of a sudden, everyone that's 3-1 or was 3-0, whatever, what have you, lost, and then all the teams that were terrible out the gate get a win. That's how last week felt.
Yeah. Then since we're on the Bears, kind of, just back to that. I don't know if we've actually talked. I had to step away for a moment. I don't know if we've talked about quarterbacks at all, but I stream quarterbacks all the time. I don't really like rostering more than one quarterback if I don't have to. So with that, Brian Hoyer, what do you guys think of him this week as a decent streaming option?
Yeah, I mean, he's coming off back-to-back 300-yard performances and 300-yard, 2-touchdown performances. You get the Colts, who, I mean, don't have the world's best defense. I think they've looked a little bit better lately, but they've gotten some of their pieces back on the defensive side of the ball. But, I mean, if you're, missing – but I don't know. Like, it's tough because I do have him ranked higher than I think most everybody else. But, I don't feel great about it. Like, I feel kind of gross about putting him that high, having him as a – I think I have him as a QB1 this week in my rankings. But I see the potential, but there's so many injuries on that team that I could see how it could turn out to be, it could turn out poorly for you because I think there are some real options this week when you're streaming. I mean, it feels gross to even say this, but like Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think actually is a decent streaming option against the Steelers this week. I mean, even last week, the Chiefs, even though they got their ass kicked, I mean, people don't realize though that Alex Smith actually finished as a QB1 last week, despite how bad they got beat. So, yeah. I think that's funny, but so I think he's a real option this week. But I don't know. I think you fire up Brian Hoyer, but I don't know if you necessarily you're not feeling fantastic about it.
So, who are some guys you would start Brian Hoyer over? Like, for example, like a lot of people are worried about. I think if you own Matthew Stafford this week against an Eagles defense who hasn't allowed a passing touchdown yet. I mean, are you just going to pull Matthew Stafford, especially coming off the week that Matthew Stafford had last week? Are you saying, well, look, I don't care if I think Matthew Stafford might be a better real-life quarterback. I think Brian Hoyer's the guy this week. You make that play?
I don't know. I think I'm probably firing up Matthew Stafford. I mean, I actually own Matthew Stafford in one of my leagues, and I'm playing him regardless. I think sometimes we get caught up in narratives and things like that. And I mean, the Eagles defense has been solid, but I don't know. I think that the Lions are actually a sneaky play this week. And I mean, I didn't really want to get to this yet, but I actually think Golden Tate breaks out this week. So no, I think you fire up you play Matthew Stafford over Brian Hoyer just because I think you feel the floor is better for Matthew Stafford than it is for Brian Hoyer. And but I mean, it really depends on the rest of your roster construction and what you're going for. Like, I mean, are you hurting in some other spots and you're really looking for the most upside or what have you? But for me, like I have Brian Hoyer above like Andy Dalton, Jameis Winston, Paxton Lynch, Kirk Cousins, and guys like that. But like I said, like he's a guy that you just don't feel like. It's like I said, it's Brian Hoyer, right? But then we saw last year Brian Hoyer. I mean, Brian Hoyer was a very, very usable streaming option at quarterback last year when he played for Houston, and this year he's doing the same thing. You don't feel great about it. He's not a hashtag good quarterback, but he is what he is, right? And I think he's somebody who's going to give you usable weeks, and I think this is one of them.
Yeah, and it hasn't been just like borderline streaming either. He's been like a top 5 quarterback over the past 2 weeks. So it's a little deceiving because it's like, man, I know who you are, Brian Hoyer. I know who you are. Don't lie to me. But I think I could see it for one more week.
I actually am starting Jameis Winston. I have Matt Ryan on the team, but I just can't start Matt Ryan against the Broncos as good as he's been. So I'm starting Jameis Winston, and Hoyer is available. I'm a little nervous about that.
Well, I think we saw Jameis Winston last week, right? The Panthers last week is what I meant to say, and how bad their defense looked. But I mean, they're going to be missing quite a few pieces this week along that defense, and I think this is a week that I don't know what to do with James because I'm like it's the Panthers defense, and like weeks prior they looked pretty good, and then last week they got absolutely torched by the Falcons, but the Falcons have been torching everybody. But I think I don't know. Like I like Jameis Winston, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a top 5 week. But then again, I also wouldn't be surprised if he's top 20, or at the at the lower end. So
that's sort of the same thing with Hoyer too, right? Because it seems like such a really good matchup, and he could be a top 5 quarterback. But would anybody be surprised if he's more top 20 than top 5?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's and I think with Winston, he's been so inconsistent. He either has a monster week or he just completely shits the bed, and you're left, trying to hope that the rest of your pieces do actually do something. But overall, I think it's like I said, I think you start Jameis Winston. But with some sort of skepticism. But how do you guys feel about Derek Anderson, who's going to be actually starting in that game? Is he a viable option this week? And is he somebody, how far down the road would you have to get to be able to actually roster and start Derek Anderson?
Had to be a pretty desperate road.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that because I am in a 32-team Dynasty League, and I have Cam Newton. And so I have to start Derek Anderson this week. I'm not feeling good about it, and I don't really have another option. But he's just about that far down for me. If there were any other starting quarterback available this week, I'd probably go with him. That's about all I have to say about that. about the very bottom for me.
I don't know that because here's the thing because this is another one of those guys because the Buccaneers have been terrible against the pass so far this season. And, I mean, they have good pieces still there for him. I mean, he still has Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen. So I don't know. I think he's another interesting play that I wouldn't be surprised if he did well. I mean, he did okay last week against the Falcons. I mean, I think he did have the 2 interceptions there, but I think that's what you're going to get. But I think he's a guy that could throw 250, 300 yards and a couple touchdowns, but he could also, throw a couple interceptions as well. So, I don't know. I feel like you have to be probably a little desperate because I think there's so many guys that are down in that range of where he would be. I think I have him at 16 this week among quarterbacks. But I just feel like I said, it's another one of those where you just kind of feel gross about throwing him in your lineup.
Yeah, some other free agent quarterbacks I'm looking at. Kirk Cousins is probably still free in a lot. Actually, no, he's owned 81%, so this league is just an anomaly there. Dak Prescott's available. But Tyrod Taylor, Joe Flacco, and that 40-mile-per-hour wind. Oh, gosh, I'm avoiding that quarterback situation. I do like Paxton Lynch versus Atlanta, I'll admit. I'm very tempted to start that one.
I actually do like him. I have him right outside of QB1. I have him at 13. And he looked really damn good last week against the Buccaneers. And then this week he gets the Falcons. I think he looked pretty good. And to be honest, now that they've opened that seal on, Paxton Lynch, their first-round pick, can they turn back to Trevor Siemian now? I mean, if he comes out this week and plays well again, I don't know if you can go back to Trevor Siemian now. I mean, he is your first-round pick. You have far more invested in him than you do Trevor Siemian. Not that Trevor Siemian looked back. I think Trevor Siemian actually played well above what any of us expected. But, I mean, can you really turn back now and bench Paxton Lynch for a quarterback who before this year and probably most people had never even heard of?
No, I mean, I don't think you can. I think they're kidding themselves. And I know Kubiak loves Trevor Siemian. He was crazy for him last year in the draft, but I think you can't turn back and go with this former 6th-round guy at Northwestern. I mean, you just spent a first-round pick. You're not going to stare at your first-round quarterback and say, I know you just looked amazing for 2 games in a row, and I know you are a future, but you're going to sit down now. Yes, it's just that wouldn't make much sense at all, and especially if he looks borderline better than Trevor Siemian has anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said, I mean, he obviously has a much bigger arm. I think he's a little bit more athletic than what Trevor Siemian is. And if you hear John Elway talk about Paxton Lynch, dude has a straight on man crush for Paxton Lynch. I mean, anytime he gets an opportunity to talk about him, he does. So I don't know, I just don't think you can go back to that. But this is a really good week to have, obviously, to fire up Paxton Lynch, and because I mean the Falcons have been horrible. I think they're missing their starting linebackers this week. I know Sean Witherspoon went down with a torn ACL. That dude is from Missouri, and love that guy. But man, that dude can not stay healthy. Hurt every single year.
Yeah.
And it's always devastating. It can't just be like a hammy problem. He's going to be out for a few weeks. He goes big or go home. So, yeah. So I don't know. Like I think you feel great about any and all Broncos this week, whether it be C.J. Anderson or Paxton Lynch or Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, I feel better about his weapons than I do Paxton Lynch necessarily. I mean, that sounds like it would be conflicting, but I'm just not sure that doesn't have the rookie struggles and still throws 2 picks. I don't know. I trust his weapons more than I do him.
So how do you guys compare him to guys we were kind of just talking about? Derek Anderson, we were talking about Jameis Winston, we talked about Brian Hoyer. Who else do we talk about? Where on the rankings would you put Paxton Lynch as far as possibly starting him this week compared to those guys?
Over Derek Anderson, just because, like I said, the weapons. I trust the weapons more, and I trust. I don't know. I trust that situation a lot more than I do Derek Anderson. I mean, Tampa Bay is ugly this week. I mean, defensively, but I'm not just going to say, I have so much confidence in Derek Anderson. So.
I don't think anybody's ever said that in the history of ever.
No. I don't think – I think in that sentence where I said I wouldn't was the first time anybody actually said those words together.
Right.
So.
Do you need a second to go throw up now after saying that? Like, are you okay? Are you good?
I'm actually kind of distracted. I'm looking at my rankings again to make sure I'm not crazy. But – yeah.
Yeah, actually, I have Paxton Lynch at 13. So, I mean, I'm probably a little bit too high on him. And maybe it's, my own recency bias of seeing how well he looked last week again in that game. But I don't know. In Mile High, I don't know. I just feel pretty good about that. And so, I don't know.
How about Dak against Cincinnati? Just looking at the percentage owned here, Dak is only owned 55%-ish around there in Yahoo, going against the Cincinnati defense that has been pretty much shredded every game this year except for week 1.
Yeah, but I mean with Dak though, I think he's serviceable, but he's not had any great week, right? Like he's always just kind of been he's been like Alex Smithish, in terms of just production, right? Like he's not going to screw you over, but he's not going to have some monster week either. I think he'll get you 17 to 19 fantasy points, and you'll feel. I mean, you'll take that, but it's certainly not something that you're not going to win a week with Dak Prescott. At least so far, he hasn't shown that. They've been far more, protected him and not really taking the reins off him as much. And I think he's done really obviously has done well in real life football, but fantasy purposes, I just don't know. He just hasn't done anything to really prove that. That he can break through that, I guess.
Yeah, one thing is with the real football part. I've been watching a lot of his stuff on Game Pass just because I'm curious. I own a couple shares. I want to see if I should actually believe or if I should actually just sell. And he's really been impressive at what he's been doing before the snap too. I think what he's been able to do is, calling the right checks, getting him in the right position, is why he's having any success at all. Because I don't think, like you said, I don't think they're completely giving him the 100% of the offense, especially with Dez, being out and having to work with guys like Bryce Butler. Bryce Butler's okay. I'm not going to knock the guy, but, he's not Dez Bryant. So Dez Butler. Wow, that's the guy.
Yeah, Dez.
Cole Beasley, always safe. I think he's 400 years old now, but I'm not going to believe in Dak to really blow me away with a 35-point. So I think he's a safe out. I think he's in that middle of the road. I think he's I think I had him, I don't know, around 17, 18 in that range maybe, but not starting him unless I really have to.
All right.
So
Sorry, go ahead, Kev.
I just want to. So last week I think everybody, the whole fantasy community, was off Matt Ryan, and he just basically shit on everybody and gave everybody the middle finger and said, that's what you get for not believing in me after that. That 500-yard performance he just put up. But how do you think he fares this week heading to Denver? Because I want no part of it again this week. I'm not messing with that. But could he, again, throw his middle fingers in the air and have a performance again like he did last, or not? I mean, you can't expect 500 yards, but a decent performance to where he would have been startable, which I think most people are avoiding.
I can tell you.
Go for it, Anthony.
Right now, I have Jameis Winston over him in the one team that I own him because I'm very nervous about that Denver game. Matt Ryan is doing great this year, but it's not like this guy has never, been like an elite player his entire career. And he does throw interceptions. And when he throws interceptions, like it's when it rains, it storms. I mean, when he throws a pick, here comes a second, a third, a fourth. So if he gets rattled in this game, I have no confidence in him bouncing back from it, and then I end up with a 3-point performance where I could start another guy, and even if Jameis Winston has a down day against Carolina, maybe I get 15. I don't know, like the floor is way too low on Matt Ryan this week. It's in the negatives.
Yeah, he is facing a heck of a defense, but over something real quick because it's insane the pace that he's on. I mean, isn't it? I mean, like, look at his stats. He's got 1,473 passing yards. Like that's nuts. And not only that, but he's got 11 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. And because I love efficient quarterbacks that are going to score some touchdowns because touchdowns are worth a few points. They're worth. I mean, you have to, depending on your format, they're worth, getting 100 yards or getting 150 yards, depending on what you're looking at. Notice is that touchdown percentage, like the percentage of passes of his that are this year. I don't know if you guys pay attention to that stat that much, but that is attainable. Like nobody does that. Last year when we were talking about Blake Bortles being, buoyed by touchdown production, he was just below 6%. So, I mean, to put that in perspective, like a really good quarterback is around 5%, and so to be up around 8% of all your passes going for touchdowns, that's kind of an unsustainable. That's probably not going to happen for a much longer type situation. And inevitably, you're going to have that 11-2 touchdown to interception rate is not going to last all season. So that's going to show up, and I think it's a good bet to say if it's going to show up against any team, that touchdown percentage rate is going to go down. That touchdown to interception rate is going to get worse probably this week. So I like him to throw for a lot of yards this week, but I don't like him throwing a lot of touchdowns this week. I could see him having more interceptions and touchdowns, like one of those 356 yards passing, but he only gets 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions, that type of thing. So that wouldn't really put him in confidently starting territory. I don't think it's an absolute meltdown because I think Kyle Shanahan has figured out his strengths and figured out that personnel. Last year it was awful. Conversely, like the touchdown percentage rate was 3.4% last year, more than double that this year. Obviously, in his second year with Shanahan, he's figuring out the offense, but I'm not going to confidently start Matt Ryan against the Denver Broncos in a situation where we're setting up. This is the time where he's going to come back down to earth, for sure.
Yeah, I think what's also surprising about Matt Ryan too, and that that stat you just gave is that it's not like they're not getting any production from their rushing attack either. Because Tevin Coleman, he's a couple weeks ago came off that 3 touchdown performance that he had, and Devonta Freeman also had the touchdown there too. So it's a little surprising that his numbers are that high because if it was the running game was so terrible and he's getting far more from that than you would understand, but that's not really the case, and that's not what's been going on. But no, I don't think you play Matt Ryan unless you're just absolutely desperate and you have no other option, because this just not, especially in Denver. is terrible. The Broncos are, an elite unit. And, outside of, I think, last year, but that game was in Pittsburgh, it's about the only time I've seen them really get hurt. Other than that, they pretty much shut everybody down. And so, no, I wouldn't want anything to do with Matt Ryan.
Yeah, me either. But I benched him last week in one of my leagues and lost because of it. So I'm still kind of crying about that. That's why I'm just a little bit tempted to start him, just because
Yeah, I'm tempted to start him too. But the last time I was tempted to start somebody and not overreact to their situation was Michael Floyd on Thursday, and I ended up with a giant old goose egg. So not exactly the same situation. Ryan's been playing a lot better than Michael Floyd, but I don't want to end up with two goose eggs on the week on the same team. So I'll go with another guy. So let's get back to the injuries. Huh?
You did start him this week. Is that what you just said?
I did.
Thanks. His snap count is really scary. I don't know if you saw that, but he's like fourth in snaps for wide receivers right now, last 2 weeks. So that's not something that I want to be investing in very heavily moving forward for sure. But go ahead with the injuries.
Yeah, sorry. Let's get through the injuries, guys, because we do have listener questions just kind of coming in here. So I do want to get to those. Charles Sims was out. We haven't talked about that, right? Jaquiz Rogers getting a start on Monday night. We talked a little bit about Carolina and Jameis Winston, but what about the running situation? They're now 2 running backs down, and the infamous Jaquiz is going to get the start.
I'm not really interested in Jaquiz. I think you can do a whole lot better just surfing than Jaquiz Rogers. I mean, I think if DeAndre, Jalen Richard, or Orleans Darkwa, or a bunch of other names like that may still be on your waiver wire, or even has Rashad Jennings officially out yet? I haven't even seen that.
Yes, he is out.
He is officially out. Yes. Even like a home run play like Bobby Rainey, just if you're in a PPR format, that could be interesting. But I don't know. I'm not really looking to do anything with Jaquiz right now.
No. I don't want any part of that. And it's actually, I'm not going to name any names, but it's nobody here. But I actually saw some people saying that Jaquiz Rogers is a better running back than Charles Sims, and I think that's just insane to even make that argument. But anyway, we're talking about Jaquiz Rogers, who's a guy that kind of came, because of injuries, and now we have a similar situation in Oakland with Latavius Murray out this week. So now, as if people have been paying attention or follow Travis, know that DeAndre Washington is the apple of his eye, and now he finally gets the chance to shine. So what do you think of DeAndre Washington this week? Are you starting him? And how do you think Jalen Richard or Richard, or however you want to pronounce the dude's name, how do you think he stacks into the offense this week?
Yeah, so I think DeAndre Washington, especially in PPR leagues, is worth a look. I'm actually starting him in 2 PPR leagues because, he's already been getting some looks. He's not gotten a ton of targets just yet, but, what he's done on the ground has actually been pretty decent as well, considering that offense as a whole has really not done a ton on the ground just yet, and his touches have already, with Latavius Murray, been trending in the right direction. So I have confidence that he's going to have a healthy workload. People want Jalen, Rashad, Richard, whatever it is. They want him to be the guy because they were mesmerized by that 1 touchdown run in week 1, and they think, oh, obviously he's the best guy, and that's just not the case. He's going to be in. He's going to be their, kick return or punt return guy probably, and he's going to spell DeAndre Washington. But I think they invested a decent draft pick in DeAndre Washington. He was an early 5th-round pick, which for running back these days is actually some decent draft capital, ahead of guys like Paul Perkins, ahead of guys like Jordan Howard, who you're already plugging in your lineup this week probably. So DeAndre Washington's going to get some looks. He's going to get some touches. He's going to get his healthiest touch count and target count just yet. He's actually caught 100% of his targets so far, and he's actually averaging, I think it's, like 6 yards, 6.5 yards per carry when he gets the touch. So I'm confidently putting DeAndre Washington in my flex spot in PPR leagues where I have him, and even in standard. he might actually. I mean, it might be that Alawale guy, whatever. He might fall in the end zone, but who knows? Um, I'm excited to see this because Latavius Murray is not an elite talent. He's just not, and he's actually only led the Raiders' backfield in rushing yards 1 week so far. So I mean, he's not exactly a beast. So even when he is back, I'm actually going to look moving forward. If DeAndre does well this week, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing DeAndre Washington get more touches than Latavius some weeks if he does much this week. So yeah, put him in your flex spot. He's got an awesome matchup. So enjoy.
Well then.
Well then.
So, like, I've been hearing so much about DeAndre Washington. I do play a ton of DFS. So, obviously, you know, like on DraftKings, he's 3,400. And, I mean, that's insane value for a guy like him. But he's probably going to be the chalk play of the week. But and then as well as, you know, in season-long leagues, I actually have DeAndre Washington as a low-end RB2 right now at 19, you know, among running backs so far this week. And I like him. And it is interesting because, you know, you see the opposite side where people think that, like, I believe that Matt Waldman said that Jalen Richard is actually has looked like a better runner on film than DeAndre Washington. But I don't know. I haven't followed that situation as close to be able to make that argument. But as of right now, I think DeAndre Washington is the play. If you're in a, you know, maybe a PPR league or something of that nature, I think maybe you could, you know, or you're just in a really deep league, I should say, maybe you could fire up Jalen Richard. But I don't know, because, like, I just don't know what to make of the situation. We haven't seen something like this, and so it's hard to really, you know, decide which one to go with. And I think you got to go with DeAndre Washington and hope that we don't just get blindsided by for Richard to get more carries than DeAndre Washington. Because if I remember, I think didn't Richard outsnap him last week? Is that accurate?
To be honest, I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but he did a heck of a lot more with the snaps. And the one solid run that he had where they actually had the toss out to the side, I mean, he showed his elite vision to read the second level. And so I think he's going to be the guy moving forward. He's going to do more with his touches than Richard, even if they do split this week. So by the end of the first half that Jalen is not the guy and DeAndre is. So I'm looking forward to it.
So it looks like Rashad Jennings is in fact out. Orleans Darkwa will get the start once again. Bobby Rainey is going to assume the pass catching duties. We talked a little bit about this on Tuesday. Which Giants running back, if either of them, do you like better between Darkwa and Rainey? And personally, are you kind of pulling the trigger on either one this week?
I personally like Darkwa more because I think he's going to get a healthier early down workload. And Paul Perkins is not, he's not a scrub. They want him to actually get some looks. They plugged him in a little bit. But pass protection, he's not quite ready. But there was a time, I don't know if you guys were watching the game at all or if you had the chance to watch it again, but Eli Manning was super frustrated at Bobby Rainey at one point because he just flat out messed up. It was supposed to be a halfback screen. He was just in the wrong spot. It was really bad. So I'm not sure how much confidence they have in Rainey or for pass protection. So I think that could go either way, but Rainey's done it before and for longer than Perkins. So I think rankings this week for those guys are going to be Darkwa. For dynasty purposes, keeper purposes, Perkins is an interesting guy because he can make some one of the highest elusive football focus and anyone in college football last year. So watch. He may become relevant here in a week or two, but yeah, that's me.
Yeah, I think the tough part, though, in trusting any Giant running back tonight is they get probably one of the worst matchups of the season because the Packers have been a complete funnel defense, and they are elite so far through 3 weeks for them against stopping the run. So where they've struggled is the pass, and then it looks like Sam Shields is going to be out again this week, which is great news for Odell Beckham. But I don't know. Like it really just depends on what your situation is. Again, roster construction. But I think Darkwa is the guy that I would probably target And then if you are in a PPR league and just desperate, Bobby Rainey's worth a look. I mean, he did receive 7 targets last week. And if this is a game that plays out the way that we think it will, and then it's going to be a shootout, and if the Giants are forced to keep up, even though, I mean, obviously the Giants have so many other options with, Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard and Victor Cruz and Will Tye, and, that Bobby Rainey could be the 4th option and all that. But I think at the worst, I think he's worth a look. But, I wouldn't feel great about starting him either.
Yeah. Sounds like we agree pretty much.
Pretty much.
We actually – it's cool. I don't know.
That Packers defense has been brutal against the run, man. I'm not starting. I'm not touching anybody against them. How about some wide receiver options, guys? Eric Decker, Des Bryant, both out. Eric Ebron out, which actually may help boost Golden Tate. So between Golden Tate, Bryce Butler, Terrence Williams, and Quincy Enunwa here, a nice foursome of most likely available receivers, because I think people probably gave up on Golden Tate at this point already. 4 weeks in, he hasn't done much of anything. I know myself, I cut ties with him. Of these 4, who do we like? I mean, not only this week, maybe rest of season. Which of these guys are you kind of getting on board with?
Kevin, you want to tackle this? I think you had something to say about Tate, right?
Yeah, Kev has a nice little note here about Tate.
So here's the deal with obviously Golden Tate has been abysmal so far this season, right? I mean, it has been nothing to write home about. He hasn't been involved in the offense. He was actually benched last week. However, I try not to believe in narratives too much, but I know the coaching staff came out this week and said that they believe that Golden Tate's going to have a monster week, which leads me to believe that they're going to do whatever they can to get him more involved, because let's face it, they need to get him more involved. He is their, whether he's their best or second best wide receiver, I think Marvin Jones has answered that. But regardless, without Eric Ebron, they're going to have to get the ball to somebody. But I think their backup tight end is Cole Wick, maybe. Anybody ever heard of that guy? So I actually think Golden Tate's a viable option this week. I know last week on the the podcast that I said he's benchable until further notice, but I don't know, things change. And the more I look into it, I think this is kind of a breakout week for him with everybody. I think with the defense focused on Marvin Jones, I think with no other really good options there outside of Theo Riddick out of the backfield, I think Golden Tate's actually startable this week and actually a viable wide receiver 3 and somebody who could really blow up this week. So if he is available, I'm running out to grab him immediately, because I think it's a little too soon to be dropping him. And this is kind of the week I think that he could really get going, although it's not a great matchup because the Eagles have yet to allow a passing touchdown on the season. But I think that again, that's obviously not going to hold up, and I think it changes this week. And with the other one, Quincy Enunwa was another guy that I love. I cannot figure out why the fantasy community does not get on board with Quincy Enunwa. I mean, I think – so I write the waiver ad article every week, and every week he's at the top of my rankings that I do for that because nobody ever picks him up. And I'm like, what is going on? Dude's getting the workload. Like, if I'm looking for – especially someone I'm picking up off waivers, I want a guy who's going to be heavily involved in the offense, and that is Quincy Enunwa. Like, even pre-Eric Decker injury, he was still getting a healthy amount of targets every week. And I don't get it. Like, in a PPR league, he should be locked up a long time ago, and he just hasn't been. He's still available in over 60%. He was, heading into this week, he was still available in over 60% of leagues, and I just don't get it. I went out and scooped him up in a couple of my leagues, and so I think those two are the two guys that I'm probably the most excited about. Obviously, Bryce Butler I do like a little bit, but that's mainly because Des Bryant's out, and I think, as we saw last week, he got 9 targets. And I think, again, this week he will see a healthy amount of targets.
And what was that? Who's the 4th one? I've forgotten. Kevin's rant was too long.
Terrence Williams, Bryce Butler, Quincy Enunwa, and Golden Tate.
I think the problem.
You guys let me go. You guys let me go.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Next time I'll just interject. I know I ramble all the time too. Justin has to interrupt me, or Andrew has to interrupt me, or somebody. Just type in the chat on Skype or whatever on the Dynasty Life pod. Just like, stop, shut up, stop. So I get it. But I think with the Terrence Williams versus Bryce Butler, that's I don't know which guy's gonna get a lot of targets, and I think Cole Beasley has a safe role there. I think he's a nice little PPR guy there that you can kind of trust. But Bryce Butler or Terrence Williams or anybody else in that, going to just be guess who's actually going to get the 9 targets. And so Bryce Butler might get those targets, but I'm not sure he's going to be super efficient with them. In the Inunwa and well, and it's interesting. I noticed this week with a guy from Pro Football Focus. I was talking about where he lined up a lot last year, and I've noticed this too. They just have not been using Golden Tate in the slot this year. Like last year, more than half of Golden Tate's routes were from the slot. This year, it's less than 20% of his routes have been from the slot. And if you look at his production, if you look at his usage, if you look at his targets, if you look at everything, it's been not good. So I'm going to stick with Enuma and Golden Tate and believe in what Tate can be. He just had 99 catches just 2 years ago. So.
All right. Golden. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. The Golden Tate bit from the slot.
For a second? Or no? Sorry.
All right. Sorry. Technical difficulties for a second there. Yeah, the Golden Tate from the slot information there is interesting, Travis. I didn't even realize that myself. The guy seems to excel in the slot position. I don't know why you wouldn't put him there. It's a coaching thing, I guess. But they should definitely consider, fixing that. And maybe they do it this week with Ebron out. Let's go back to the injuries. I only have one other one on here, but there's a few more I wanted to talk about. Antonio Gates is actually expected to play. So between Gates and Hunter Henry, I guess you would roll with Gates in this one. That just kind of muddies that situation a little bit if you are a Henry owner there. There were some other ones that came across Roto World that I kind of wanted to mention. Let me get back to them for a second here. All right. Safarian Jenkins is active for the Jets. That's pretty interesting. How about Eli Rogers for Pittsburgh? Healthy scratch. Crazy. We were just talking about that guy beginning of the season as possibly being the wide receiver 2 now that Martavis Bryant is out. He was impressive in the preseason, impressive in training camp, yada, yada, yada.
Well, I think that move sorry to cut you off. I think that move actually makes sense because Sammy Coach does something that these guys don't offer, and that's his deep threat. I think he leads the league in passes over 40 yards. And here's the thing, playing the Jets today, the Jets give up the most 40-yard passes so far on the season. So it makes sense that, you're not going to limit Sammy Coates because Eli Rogers is more of a slot possession receiver type of wide receiver, whereas Sammy Coates is this field stretcher. And I think that makes sense because with Marcus Wheaton, I think, he serves better as in the same role as Eli Rogers, which is kind of what I felt heading in, that was a problem. Marcus Wheaton missed the first few weeks of the season. So now that Eli Rogers is back, I think the roles are becoming more defined. And like I said, Sammy Coates is really playing the Martavis Bryant role from last year, although not as efficient as what Martavis Bryant is, but nonetheless, that's still what that's what he's doing. So that move doesn't really surprise me all that much.
Also, news coming out of Baltimore: Kenneth Dixon is wearing a significant knee brace, according to a Baltimore Sun reporter out there. So I'm not sure that I'm actually pulling the trigger on Dixon just yet. I might want to give it some time. But what do you guys feel about Terrence West coming off of a super hot game last week?
I've never been a believer in Terrence West, and yeah, he's going to have a good week here and there, but he's not going to be the guy here in a couple weeks. He's going to buy Kenneth Dixon here soon. It's not going to be this week. I would roll with Terrence West one more week, I guess, but I have no idea why.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think this is you hope that Terrence West again this week comes out and just rips it up. against the Redskins defense that has been horrific. I think they've given up like the second most touchdowns to running backs, and I think they give up the second most points to opposing running backs. So this is an excellent week for Terrence West to really, continue what he did last week. And I hope he does, because then, like I said, he becomes a great sell high candidate and move on. Because I completely agree with the sentiment that Kenneth Dixon is going to take over that backfield. It's just a matter of time, and I think they are going to slowly ease him back in and not rush him coming off that injury. But I think Terrence West's time is limited as that, in that role.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, Buck Allen is actually a decent talent too. For some reason, the coaching staff apparently hates him and just is not really giving him a shot either. I think he's actually going to get some touches today. If you absolutely have nobody else, I think Buck Allen could get some touches today, just because I don't think they want to rush Kenneth Dixon in and get a huge workload right away. So honestly, I think for 1 week here, it might actually be Terrence West, Buck Allen, Kenneth Dixon one more time. But I'm not really confident in Dixon starting this week, and I don't really want to be confident in Terrence West, because we've seen Terrence West for a few years now, and last week was an anomaly, not the norm. So I think it could happen one more week, but not much longer after that.
Wow, so how about this little tidbit that just came across Twitter here, and it's really very little to do with fantasy football, it's more to do with the NFL seemingly continuing to shoot itself in the foot and not understanding what its fans want. NFL teams are no longer allowed to turn highlights into GIFs or post their own game day video. They can incur fines of up to $100,000. If any team social media account posts its own highlights, its own GIFs, anything like that.
What?
Yeah. Why?
Man.
That's just complete lack of understanding of what your fans want. But that's the NFL, right?
Well, I mean, the owners, are kind of the owners. So I don't know. You would think that maybe, I don't know. I guess they would agreed upon that, I would think, because
I don't know why they would.
I don't know. Need way more details on that. That just sounds really unbelievably stupid. There's not really another word for it besides stupid. So I'd have to understand a little bit more of the details before I really knew whether to be upset about it or not. Just kind of that's all there is to it. I mean, that's doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know. There's still very little detail on ESPN, so you're right. We probably need more details. Back to fantasy, though. We do have some user questions coming through. Just a couple right now, but of course, if you have questions, feel free to put them right here in the YouTube chat, or go ahead over to Twitter and use hashtag AskTFA. Those are the two ways to get your questions to us, and we'll enjoy answering them. Hopefully we have answers to the questions. Sometimes you guys give us some doozies. We'll go to YouTube first here. Andrew Hankins joining us again. He needs a flex play, guys. The options are Quincy Enunwa, Sammy Coates, DeAndre Washington, and Devontae Parker. This is a PPR league. I did put the options in the chat as well in case you need to see that there. So pick one for a flex play in a PPR league: Enunwa, Coates, DeAndre Washington, Devontae Parker.
Kevin, you go first.
Oh, oh man, that's tough.
Yeah,
because for me, it's either Quincy Enunwa or DeAndre Washington. I think those are probably my two options that I would. To be in a PPR, I guess I would go with DeAndre Washington.
Yeah, I like your pick. I didn't want to be the first one to say it, so I'll let you do it. I really like DeAndre Washington. I think not that I think he's like an elite talent. I mean, he was majorly overlooked in the dynasty fantasy community. All this offseason, he was absolutely free in most rookie drafts. So I was just snatching him up as much as I could. But the hype train of him, I don't know how, but I guess somebody wrote an article and he got popular, and even as we got closer to the season, people were actually drafting him in even some standard leagues. But I think this week against the Chargers, is that what it is? Yeah, I'm going to go with DeAndre Washington because I think he's got some steady usage. I think he'll have the most touches out of that crew, and he might actually have – last week he had 3 catches. I think he could add a couple more catches. So I think he's got a pretty safe PPR floor this week with looking at probably 4 to 5 catches. And then whatever yards he gets on probably his 12 to 15 touches this week are going to be decent. So I like Enunwa quite a bit. I think the overall talent in this crew, Devontae Parker might have the most raw talent. But as we discussed last night, Kevin, Devontae Parker is going to be facing a little bit of Jason McCourty this week, probably half his snaps or so. So I'm not really confident in starting Devontae Parker this week just yet. I want to see more. I want to see a consistent target for Parker. I want to see Tannehill throw to anybody besides Jarvis Landry a little bit longer before I grade about Devontae Parker in PPR or anything for that matter.
Yeah, Dolphins' offense is hard to rely on at this point. And, last time I said that, of course, Devontae Parker came out in the first drive and got a touchdown, so it made me look a little bit like a fool. But he did nothing the rest of the game, all right? So let's relax a little bit. But it's a very hard offense to rely on. They have looked just absolutely awful. Very disappointing considering the Adam Gase came in with this, idea that he has this amazing offense and he's an amazing coordinator, blah, blah, blah. And he could be a great coach, but the talent that they have right now is not getting it done. I agree with the DeAndre Washington pick as well. Sammy Coates and Quincy Enunwa, I think, are both pretty tempting options, especially how poor the Jets secondary has been playing. And the same thing with Pittsburgh secondary. They haven't been great either. Parker would probably be the guy I wouldn't even consider at that point.
I don't know. It's kind of interesting because I kind of like Ryan Tannehill as a sneaky option this week at quarterback. But
yeah,
it's also believing in him.
Yeah. See, the front 7 of the Titans are they're not bad, but the defensive backs of the Titans, they're just not that deep. They've got McCourty, who's kind of like a really solid cornerback too, and Cox looks decent. He looked decent last week, and he had that pick, but he's not somebody I'm really confident about. So I think when it comes to the secondary, I don't mind starting quarterbacks against my Titans because my Titans defensive backs are not great. They're just not. And that's something that they're going to have to fix sooner or later because it gets really old because they can stop the run. They've already been doing that some this year. It's just getting eaten up in the passing game. So I think you're right. Sneaky play.
Yeah, it's just always hard to believe in Ryan Tannehill. He just when you believe in him, he shits on you, and then whenever you don't believe on him, is when he goes off. So who knows? But speaking of that same game though as well, would you consider playing any Miami Dolphin running back? I know I saw earlier this week that MJ said that he wanted to limit it down to one guy and get it more in Arian Foster's out. And I don't really understand because Jay Ajayi, anytime he seems to get the ball in his hands, he seems to do well, but they just don't give him the ball. I don't know if it's the knee injury or what have you, or not the knee injury, but the knee, the bone-on-bone thing. But it's like they just will never give him an opportunity. But he seems like he's their best option. Could Jay Ajayi be a sneaky play today?
I think Ajayi will be the guy who is going to get the carries. I think you're right in that. The Tennessee defense has been really freaking good against the run so far this year. So I'm a little nervous about it because, one, we don't know the workload that Ajayi is going to get, right? I mean, they say he's going to get it. They say they want to stick to one guy, but actions speak louder than words in this situation, Mr. Gase. Let's see if you can actually stick to that and let one of your running backs get hot before pulling him out and throwing in some other scrub. It's not like we have this stable of backs that is freaking fantastic. We had Damian Williams, Isaiah Peed, Jay Ajayi. Arian Foster, if he was there, I could see a split between Ajayi and Foster, but he's not. I mean, Foster's out again, so why not just ride that Ajayi train the whole way and see what he can do? He looked good last week, like you said. Every time they give him a chance, he's looking pretty good, but they're just not giving him that chance. What do you think about your defense, Travis? Is that a fake top 5 defense against the run, or are they legit?
I think it's legit. I think at the very beginning of the year, week one, they absolutely stuffed Adrian Peterson. They absolutely just embarrassed Adrian Peterson. Like he could not go anywhere. Obviously, they were trying to stop the run first because Sean Hill was the quarterback. Let him do anything. It's not like they actually stacked the box. I watched and rewatched that game because I was curious to see were they actually that good. They actually stuffed the run, and they didn't have to stack the box. They actually a lot of his runs that were stuffed or limited to less than 5 yards for sure, because he didn't actually have many runs over that anyway. But it was six-man fronts, 7-man fronts, just normal looks, normal stuff. Nothing 8 in the box, none of that at all. So they are a stout front, they've got guys like Brian Orakpo, they've got Avery Williamson, Wesley Woodyard, Derek Morgan. They've got some big bodies on the inside with Casey. I'm actually neighbors with one of the guys. Daquan Jones is just a massive human being. He is just a massive human being, and so they can stuff the run. So I'm confident in that, but I'm definitely not confident in them stopping Jarvis Landry. They have no answer for Jarvis Landry at all. Landry's going to eat today, as he always does, but they have nobody. They don't have a decent cover corner, slot corner. They don't have a decent cover safety, and their cover linebackers are not really middle of the road. So I like Jarvis Landry. I'm okay with Devontae Parker if you really, really need somebody. But I don't know. The running back situation was interesting. I was looking at that because I own Kenyon Drake in a couple dynasty leagues, and I own Jay Ajayi in a couple dynasty leagues. I was interested to see the split count. And Kenyon Drake 2 weeks ago actually was getting a lot of action. I don't know if you guys watched that game. I'm sure you did, Anthony. Kenyon Drake was actually in quite a bit. And then last week they swapped it, and Jay Ajayi was the guy who got a lot of action. And so I'm not sure I'm really confident in anybody there, but I just think the best talent might be Ajayi. I think he actually has done more with his touches. And Kenyon Drake has had a couple plays where he's broken it for a little bit. Damian Williams is not the answer. So if I have to go with anybody, it's going to be Ajayi, but it's not going to be because I actually believe he's going to have a high ceiling type week. It's probably going to be because I've been decimated by injuries like I have in one league where I'm starting him. So
yeah,
that's it.
Kenyon Drake was actually named the starter 2 weeks ago. That's why he kind of got the bulk of the load there. But it looks like he's falling out of favor with the coaching staff, surprisingly, because they traded up to draft him. He's shown up out of shape more often than not, and he hasn't been able to grasp the offense as well as they thought he should be able to. So he's actually falling off a little bit. Not to say that he can't come back. I mean, this is very much a wide-open running back competition, but that explains the situation right now with why Drake got the start 1 week and is now pretty much irrelevant. Here we are 2 weeks later.
Yeah, it's interesting that they traded up for Drake and Carew, yet both of them have really yet to even grasp the offense here. We're sitting week 5, and neither of them have really made any impact whatsoever.
And Xavier Howard as well. I mean, they traded up for 3 different players as if they were a team that only had a few holes to fill. Let's trade up and get these guys. I mean, this is a team that has a shit ton of holes to fill, and there was no reason to trade up. But that, that's neither here nor there. Xavier Howard actually did start last week, but is injured, of course, so he won't be playing this week. Yeah, what happened to Leonte Carew? I mean, just nothing going from that guy right now. All right, fellas, let's get into another question here. Back to YouTube. Too many tabs open. Matisse. Oh, we haven't talked about Tevin Coleman, so this is a good one. Should I start Tevin Coleman, Victor Cruz, or Golden Tate in my half-point PPR flex spot? Tevin Coleman I also have on the bench this week because he does have that sickle cell trait, which apparently in Denver and the high altitude can cause medical issues for people who are highly active and contain that trait. What do you guys think about the Tevin Coleman situation, and who would you start here in a PPR flex, Coleman, Cruz, or Tate?
Well, regardless of there's the sickle cell situation there. that's just all bad. You're going against Denver's defense, and then you couple that with the fact that he's probably going to be extremely limited. He's not even on my radar this week because of that. Of course, then he'll probably go out and score 2 touchdowns this week. But regardless, for me, I think I feel gross. Oh man, I'd go Golden Tate. I like them both. I have Golden Tate at 29. I have Victor Cruz at 35 in my rankings. So I think Victor Cruz has a safer floor, but I think Golden Tate has a higher ceiling.
Yeah, I probably agree with that just because Victor Cruz, I mean, it's great for the Giants that they have all these receiving options, but it's not great for Victor Cruz in that, I mean, really what first option, OBJ, or actually thus far it's been Sterling Shepard, but, first and second option, it's been, Sterling or OBJ, and Victor Cruz has been that afterthought. He's actually got some garbage time targets here and there in a couple spots, I guess, when I've been watching, but I don't know. I think I like like you said, Kevin, he's got a safe kind of, I almost want to start you in my flex floor, but I'm not really sure that his ceiling is the same. Definitely not the same salsa dancing ceiling that we had a few years back. So I think Golden Tate, I think the coaching staff wants him to succeed. I think they'll probably use him in a smarter way, and we see Golden Tate bounce back. I think he could be a dud once again, but I think if you're going for a home run, it's Tate. If you're going for that safe, I just need a second flex type guy, and I want him to get 5 or 6 points. Okay, cool. Victor Cruz, I just need any points from you. Then I go that direction. But I swing for the fences more often than not, and so let's go with Tate.
Oh, we talked about how much the Giants are going to need to pass in this one because we doubt they're going to be able to run the ball at all. And for that reason, and the reason I just don't think Golden Tate has a bounce back week, I think Tate's pretty much done in this offense. I mean, if they wanted to get him the ball, they would get him the ball. He's doing something wrong, or he's not fit for the position they have him in. And you know what? Until he has a bounce back week, I'm not going to be rolling with him at all. So I'm going to go with Victor Cruz basically because of the volume, how much they're going to have to pass. Giants secondary is beatable. It is a 3-headed monster there, but I don't know. I'm willing to take that chance with Cruz over Tate, who could just come up absolutely empty. All right, it is 12:45, guys. We talked about doing a lightning round here. So get as many questions as you can into our chat, into Twitter, anything you have, even the slightest, smallest question that you could have, put it there in the chat. Kevin, I'm sure, has a bunch dialed up as well in case we run out of your questions here on YouTube. So let's get to it. Lightning round, guys. Very little explanation, just who you would go with a little bit of backstory here. So TN joining us. Thanks for joining us again, TN. Seen you every single week this year. Good to have you back. Eli Manning versus Green Bay or Stafford versus Philly. Is this the week that Manning and Odell get back on track?
Absolutely. I'm going Eli Manning, and then Odell gets to face the defense that has given up the most fantasy points to number 1 wide receivers. So, yes, go Eli.
Yep. Yeah, not to mention, Sam Shields is out. So that's another thing we have to remember. I think that the defense that's already been pretty bad against the pass is going to get worse this week against an offense that has 3 solid wide receivers. And actually, I believe Donnell is out, so with Ty being the tight end, in my opinion, Ty is actually the better receiving option there anyway. So you've got 4 legit options to go with in the passing game. So, yeah, let's go with Eli.
All right. This is also from TN. In my flex position, I have Tajay Sharp versus Miami or Zach Ertz versus Washington. Everyone else is on a bye or injured. So, guys, Tajay Sharp or Zach Ertz in a flex spot. PPR league. No, non-PPR. Sorry, standard. Zach Ertz versus Tajay Sharp.
Well, for me, it's kind of hard to start a guy, who's just coming back from an injury sometimes. But I think what we saw before he went down is he's going to be the guy again. He's going to get a lot of targets. With Ertz, it's not a question of whether he's going to get a lot of targets. It's always whether he's actually going to get a touchdown because he hasn't been getting those very often in his career. But Tajay Sharp is not either. I mean, he might be the wide receiver 1 kind of, in this offense that Titans have going on, this exotic smash mouth mess. But I'm going to go with Ertz just because I don't believe in my own Titans offense at all.
Yeah, I can't play Tajay Sharp, especially in a non-PPR. But and he has Zach Ertz versus Washington, which they play Detroit this week. So Detroit gives up the third most fantasy points, 2 tight ends. I'm all aboard Zach Ertz. So.
All right, let's go to.
So we got start 2, Marshall Cobb, and I'm guessing that's Deshaun Jackson's standard league.
Yeah, I was going to try to pronounce his name, but I have no idea. So Marshall Cobb or Deshaun Jackson?
No, start 2, Marshall Cobb and Deshaun Jackson.
Oh, start 2, I'm sorry.
Brandon Marshall, for me, it's Brandon Marshall 100%. It's not even actually close because I think Brandon Marshall goes off this week. And the other one, I guess I'm going to go Randall Cobb. I think this may be the week he finally gets going. So,
yeah, I'm going to go with Brandon Marshall and Deshaun Jackson just because I am a frustrated Randall Cobb owner, and the dude needs to wake up. So you are on you're on my bench, man. You're on my bench. But those guys anyway. Actually, I'm starting him in the leagues where I have him, but in this situation,
he's talking a big game and he's not following through. I'm going Marshall and Cobb too. I think that 40-mile-per-hour wind there in Baltimore is going to really affect that passing game and the kicking game. So I'm going to go with Marshall and Cobb.
Yeah, in all seriousness, let's go Cobb. But I'm mad at that dude right now. So.
He says he fears heavy attention on Marshall with the receiving core being very slim, with no Decker and another one nursing a knee, but still playing. It doesn't matter. You still go with Marshall.
Well, I mean, the new one thing, they said that if this would have been the time when the probable tags were still there, then he would have been listed as probable this week. So there was never really a concern with Quincy Enunwa. It was now with the new injury system and how they list everybody as questionable or doubtful. It presents, I think, a bigger issue for fantasy owners when they see a questionable tag. But from what I saw, what I read, that if they had probable, he would have been probable this week. So that's not something I would be slightly even concerned with Quincy Enunwa.
Yeah, and with that questionable tag, I saw some numbers this week. I don't know, it was one of the ESPN guys that tweeted it out, but it's been, I think 75% of the guys listed as questionable have actually started anyway, but there hadn't been a doubtful player start just yet. So it's frustrating, but the questionable tag, a lot of those people are starting. So I'm not really worried about Marshall at all.
For sure. So let's next one here. Someone offered me a trade in a half-point PPR. I give up Odell. I get Devonta Freeman. Absolutely not. No. Answer is no. Streaming option at quarterback: Hoyer, Paxton Lynch, or Cousins.
Well, I guess I go. Yeah, Brian Hoyer. And I don't feel good about it, but let's go Brian Hoyer there. I think, yeah, he's got a great matchup. And
yeah, I'd rank them Hoyer, Lynch, Cousins in that. That 40-mile-per-hour wind scares the shit out of me. I mean, I'll be honest. The passing games in that wind and Cousins with his noodle arm, no, not happening.
Now, is it sustained 40-mile-an-hour or is it burst? Because
I've only seen tidbits on it on Twitter, and you know how the Twitter news can be very limited. So I'm not sure if it's burst or sustained.
Yeah, if it's always 40 miles an hour, you can just adjust and throw curveballs all day. So I want to see that actually.
I'd like to see that too.
Game, and I'm gonna.
And Kirk Cousins throws it to the sideline. Oh, it comes back and it's caught. Oh my goodness. Sorry. Onwards.
By Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, by Deshaun Jackson. Would you rather start Dalton or Ryan this week?
Dalton.
Yeah, Dalton this week. I think Matty Ice crashes down to earth this week a little bit against a tough matchup, for sure.
I think we had one more on Twitter here. PPR flex: Powell, Tate, or Fozzie.
Man, people love Fozzie, but I can't do that. I think we've already expressed how we are believing in Tate this week. Safer floor, I think Bilal Powell, for me, is actually the safe guy there because his touches have been trending in the right direction. He's, around that 10-touch area, 10 to 12-touch area with Forte now because Forte is not going to touch the ball 30 times a game like he was, I guess, at the very beginning of the year. So they fixed that, and now Powell's actually got a pretty consistent role. So safer floor, Powell, higher ceiling, Tate.
Kev, you agree?
Did they say? Sorry, now did they say it was a PPR or not?
Yes, it is a PPR.
No,
I'm
I still
going
got.
Fozzie for the record.
Oh no, I'm going Tate, and then but Bilal Powell certainly somebody to keep an eye on because I think he's just getting more and more involved in the offense. And Matt Forte, I think, has a ton of injuries. I'm no doctor, so I don't like to speculate on all that stuff, but I just don't think Matt Forte is right now.
I went with Fozzie on my studs list as well this week. He caught 9 of 9 targets last week with Derek Anderson coming in. I think he will be Anderson's little security blanket there, so I like him. I mean, in a PPR league, 9 catches is 9 points. That's before any yards, before any touchdowns, before anything like that. So I'm going with Fozzie in that one. Just got another one on Twitter, Marvin Jones or Amari Cooper?
Marvin Jones is a little bit dinged up, and I'm going Amari Cooper. I think talent-wise, it's not really close. And I think Crabtree, yeah, he was the guy who caught the touchdowns last week, but could very well and very easily be Cooper this week. So
People giving up pretty early on Cooper, right? I mean, we talked about it Tuesday, Kev. The numbers are almost exactly the same between Cooper and Crabtree, except for the touchdowns. He just hasn't been the target in the red zone so far, but that's bound to change.
yeah, Cooper's just an unbelievable talent. I mean, he was a top 10 NFL pick for a reason. He's the best wide receiver in his class and best wide receiver. He would have made this year's wide receiver class look just absolutely horrible had he been in this class. So people are giving up way too quick. Marvin Jones is just broken. So let's just go with Cooper there.
All right, that's if you have more questions, guys, on YouTube, feel free to throw them in the chat there, Kev, if you want to take it away with some questions from your Twitter stream there, since you blow us away in follower count. Go for it.
All right, Marvin Jones or Emmanuel Sanders?
Emmanuel Sanders has been the wide receiver 1 in Denver. That's like targets, the actual yards, and I mean just production. By every measure, he's actually been the guy. I think they go to him early and often. I don't know why that's necessarily been the case. I really still like Demaryius Thomas a lot. I like them both. But I think I'm going to go with Emmanuel Sanders this week. I like the matchup, and I think it's pretty safe to rely upon.
Yeah, I think the Detroit offense is really going to struggle against Philadelphia this week. I'm going with Emmanuel Sanders as well.
I guess I'm on an island. I'm going Marvin Jones. Jerick McKinnon or Alshon Jeffrey?
Man, PPR?
It doesn't say, of course.
Yeah, I think they're gonna really feed McKinnon this week. They're gonna really rely on him a lot, and Jeffrey's not 100%, and he's gonna have a lot of attention today. He could just get bracketed and stop today. I like Alshon Jeffrey a whole lot as a talent. I like what he does. He has. I mean, honestly, if you watch him, he's got a limited route tree, but he's got glue for hands. But I think this week I think long term this season he's going to get a lot of targets and he's going to be just fine. But against, like you said earlier, Vontae Davis, or even if he just gets 2 DBs on him, I'm not going to trust Alshon. So McKinnon.
Yeah, I'm not an Alshon fan, but I also came out a few weeks ago and said I really wasn't a believer in McKinnon either, and he kind of made me look silly last week. I'm going to stick with McKinnon. I just the Bears' offense has been bad. Jeffrey along with them, so I'm going to go with the guy who's going to get guaranteed touches there in Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah. Would you bench Julio Jones for Marvin Jones?
No.
That matchup is confusing, but no, I wouldn't.
I do have one on YouTube, Kev, after you answer, if you would bench Julio for Marvin.
No.
No. So Chris Hogan or Mike Wallace flex in a PPR league?
What is it? Say it again.
Chris Hogan or Mike Wallace, PPR?
I guess people are thinking that Edelman's just not going to be super healthy this week because, I mean, otherwise it's really
I think people are concerned about some sort of foot issue, but
well, Tom spreads the ball out a lot too, doesn't he?
Well, yeah, but there's also the fact that what I think over his last Julian Edelman with Tom Brady over his last 16 games had, I think it was over 100 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So I don't think that's really an issue. So, no. What were the two options? Chris Hogan and who?
Well, it's Chris Hogan and Mike Wallace. I'm going to go with Hogan because the Mike Wallace targets have transitioned back over to Steve Smith, as we've seen so far. So I would rather take the chance on Hogan this week than go with Wallace.
Yeah, and like you said, the conditions and everything, but I think I'm going to go with Mike Wallace. I believe in his opportunities this week more than I do Hogan.
I'm starting both against you, Kev, in that PPR league.
That is gross.
Dude,
it's gross. You have to
look
both
at
those
my
guys?
team. Look at my team in that league. I did not take a wide receiver till like the 7th round, and I'm 4-0. 0 wide
Did I
receiver.
auto drafted like the first? I for some reason I yeah. Anyway,
Hunter
doing so
Henry or
in that
Jesse
league.
James?
Jesse James. No, I'd probably go Hunter Henry, even though, I don't know. Antonio Gates is playing today, but it's supposed to be limited.
Yeah, and Henry was actually getting snaps even when Gates was on the field. They were because of them being limited with who their wide receivers were. He was still actually getting some decent snaps. So I think Henry is a great talent. He's a do-it-all type, and if Gates has any hiccups today, Hunter's going to be the guy. So
Remember the number of people who were really down on Henry? And you know what? Travis, there's actually me and you. We had a conversation about Henry. He was not asked to ever receive the ball in Ohio State. So I remember having a conversation being like, this guy could be really great.
No, he wasn't at Ohio State. We were talking about a different guy.
I thought this was the Ohio State guy. Where did Hunter Henry come from?
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought that was the Ohio State guy.
Because Nick Van Nett was the guy. I think he's
you're right. You're right. My apologies.
many wide receivers. He'd be wide open in the flat, but it wouldn't matter because they had Braxton Miller.
They wouldn't throw it to him.
Yeah, and Zeke Elliott.
Subconsciously, I wanted it to be that guy because I wanted him to come into the NFL and prove that he could catch the ball, but I guess not. Hunter Henry is from Arkansas. My apologies. Great talent. I would go with him as well on this one.
Yeah.
Is it safe to drop Jeremy Langford? I have Jordan Howard and I need a roster space. I mean, I'm dropping him. What do you guys think about Langford? Not expected back till way late this year. Howard seems to be running really well.
It's going to ultimately depend on who you're doing it for, I think.
Yeah, and if you have short benches, I'm in one league where we start quite a few, but we only have 6 bench slots. And so, no IR. So it's like you already have a couple injuries of more important players than Langford. Yeah, I think that type of situation says it's okay. So I probably need more information to confirm that. But if it's for the right guy.
All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. This has been another edition of the Fantasy Authority Game Day Show. Coming to you live each and every Sunday morning from 11:30 a.m. Eastern right up until kickoff, which is about 5 minutes away, if that, maybe less than 5 minutes away. So enjoy Week 5. Enjoy the games. Good luck to your teams. Good luck to your fantasy teams and your NFL teams. Travis, good luck to the Titans, even though I hope you lose.
I'm not wishing you luck. I hope you guys lose.
At least he's honest. And Kev, good luck to the Kansas City Chiefs on their bye week coming out healthy. Not having any freak injuries because that's been your luck this year. And thank you to all the listeners. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, tell Jamal Charles to get healthy because that's been really annoying this year, man.
Yeah, Jamal, can you come back, please? It's about time, buddy. We're waiting for you. We're patiently waiting. Well, maybe impatiently at this point. Thank you guys, all the listeners, all the people who joined us today. We really appreciate it. We've seen quite a few of you here every single week, and we love to see you going forward. That'll do it. I'm Anthony Pinzone. Alongside me, I had Kevin Steele and Travis May today. This has been the Fantasy Authority Game Day Show, and we will see you next Sunday.